I'm Stephanie Blackwood, 29 years old, and 3 years ago my father screamed at me to get out of his house and never come back. With only one suitcase and $200 to my name, I had nowhere to go. Today, I'm sipping coffee on the balcony of my $30 million Malibu mansion, watching the sunrise over the Pacific Ocean. The journey from that doorstep to this balcony wasn't easy, but it changed everything. Before I dive into how I went from homeless to homeowner of a beachfront paradise, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of turning pain into power. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. Our house wasn't anything special, for bedrooms, faded blue siding, and a yard just big enough for a swing set. But for my father, Frank Blackwood, that house represented failure. He'd always dreamed bigger, talked bigger, and blamed everyone else when reality didn't match his expectations. Dad worked as a sales manager for a manufacturing company. He wasn't bad at his job, but he wasn't exceptional either. That mediocrity ate at him daily, turning him into a pressure cooker of resentment that would eventually explode on anyone nearby, usually me. He'd come home, loosen his tie, and immediately find something to criticize. The house wasn't clean enough. Dinner wasn't ready on time. My grades weren't perfect enough. Stephanie, he'd say, examining my report card with a 98% on a calculus test, what happened to the other 2 points? Never mind that I had the highest score in the class. In Frank Blackwood's house, excellence was the minimum expectation. My mother, Grace, was beautiful in that quiet, understated way. She had warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, which became increasingly rare as the years went by. Mom had been an art teacher before marrying Dad, but he convinced her to quit when my brother Jason was born. A Blackwood wife doesn't work, he declared, as if bestowing some great honor upon her. I watched over the years as her artistic spirit slowly withered under his control. She loved us fiercely, but silently. When Dad would rage, she'd wait until he stormed off, then slip into our rooms with a gentle touch and whispered encouragement. "This will pass," she'd say, but we both knew it never really did. She was the buffer between his anger and us, absorbing the worst of it herself. Looking back, I realized she was trapped in her own way, financially dependent and emotionally manipulated into believing she couldn't survive without him. Then there was my brother Jason, 2 years older and the golden child. He played football, got decent grades, and most importantly, worshipped our father. He followed Dad's blueprint without question: business degree, corporate job, marrying his college girlfriend Heather before they'd even figured out who they were as individuals. Dad beamed with pride at everything Jason did, while finding fault with everything I pursued. I discovered computers when I was 12. My grandmother Lillian, Mom's mother, and the only person who ever stood up to my father, gave me a refurbished laptop for my birthday. Dad was furious, calling it a distraction from real studies, but Grandma Lillian held firm. "The girl has a mind of her own, Frank," she said during one of their tense standoffs in our living room. And thank God for that. That computer became my escape. While other kids my age were at the mall or watching TV, I was teaching myself to code. I started with simple HTML, building basic websites about things I loved, astronomy, mystery novels, even a fan page for my favorite band. Then I moved on to JavaScript, Python, and eventually app development. The logic of coding made sense to me in a way human emotions often didn't. There was a clarity to it: either your code worked or it didn't. No mind games, no shifting expectations. School came easily to me. I maintained a 4-point GPA without much effort, which somehow made my accomplishments worth less in my father's eyes. "Natural talent without hard work is wasted potential," he'd lecture, completely blind to the hours I spent hunched over my laptop, learning skills that would eventually make me millions. My 16th birthday stands out as particularly painful. I just completed my first real app, a simple tool that helped organize study notes and automatically generated flashcards from them. It wasn't revolutionary, but I'd built it from scratch, and a few hundred students at my high school were already using it. I was bursting with pride when I showed it to my family at dinner. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, genuinely impressed even though she didn't fully understand the technical achievement. Jason glanced at it for all of 2 seconds. Cool, I guess. Dad barely looked up from cutting his steak. Is this why your AP chemistry grade dropped to an A-? Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was a special delivery. Jason's regional football trophy had arrived. Dad immediately pushed back from the table, my app forgotten as he fawned over the trophy, taking photos of Jason holding it, calling relatives to brag. My birthday cake sat untouched until nearly midnight. That night, I made a silent promise to myself as I lay in bed, tears dried on my pillow. Someday, I would build something so successful that even Frank Blackwood couldn't dismiss it. I would prove my worth, not just to him, but to myself. I worked part-time jobs throughout high school, babysitting, tutoring younger kids in math and science, even building websites for local small businesses. Every dollar went into my savings account, my escape fund, as I privately called it. I knew college would be my ticket out, and while Dad had set up college funds for both Jason and me, I didn't want to rely on his money. Money in our house always came with strings attached. Grandma Lillian passed away during my senior year of high school. She left me $10,000 with a note that read, "Build something wonderful, Stephanie, and never let anyone clip your wings." My father suggested I invested in a safe CD or put it toward practical college expenses. Instead, I kept it untouched in a separate account, seed money for my future dreams that were still taking shape. By the time I graduated high school as valedictorian, I had nearly $20,000 saved, my inheritance from Grandma, and everything I'd earned myself. I had one foot out the door, ready to start the next chapter far away from Frank Blackwood's crushing expectations and conditional love. What I didn't know then was how completely that door would eventually close behind me. When my acceptance letter from UCLA arrived, offering a substantial scholarship for computer science, I felt like I could finally breathe. Los Angeles was over 1,000 miles from Denver, far enough that I could create my own identity away from my father's shadow. Dad, predictably, was disappointed with my choice. Computer science? He scoffed, waving the acceptance letter like it was a parking ticket. Blackwoods are business leaders, not tech support. Northwestern accepted you for business. That's where you should go. I don't want to study business, I replied, summoning courage from somewhere deep inside. I want to build things. His face hardened into that familiar mask of disapproval. You're making a mistake. But it's your future you're ruining, not mine. Those words followed me to California, an unwelcome companion to my fresh start. Despite the substantial scholarship, college was still expensive. My savings helped, but I needed to work throughout my time at UCLA to make ends meet. I took a job at the campus IT help desk and picked up freelance web design projects whenever I could. The schedule was brutal, classes all day, work until late evening, then studying and coding projects until the early morning hours. My roommate freshman year, Tara Mitchell, quickly became my closest friend. She was studying digital marketing and had a vibrant personality that balanced my more analytical nature. Tara grew up in San Francisco with parents who owned a successful restaurant chain. Unlike me, she had unwavering family support, both emotional and financial. "Your dad said what?" she gasped one night after I recounted a particularly discouraging phone call home. "That's not tough love, Steph. That's just being a jerk." Hearing someone else call out my father's behavior was oddly validating. In Denver, everyone thought Frank Blackwood was a pillar of the community, successful, charitable, involved in local politics. No one saw what happened behind closed doors. By sophomore year, Tara and I were inseparable. We moved off campus to a tiny apartment with mismatched furniture and questionable plumbing, but it was ours. One night, over cheap wine and takeout Chinese food, we hatched the idea for our first business venture, an app that would help college students find last-minute deals at local restaurants. "Think about it," Tara said, gesturing with her chopsticks. "Restaurants have slow nights and excess food. Students are always broke and hungry. We connect them. Food saver," I suggested, the concept already taking shape in my mind. We could use geolocation to show deals nearby, and restaurants could post in real time when they need to move inventory. For the next 6 months, we poured every spare minute into developing FoodSaver. I handled the technical side, coding between classes and during slow periods at work. Tara built relationships with local restaurant owners, convincing them to try our platform once it launched. We were fueled by ramen noodles, caffeine, and the intoxicating belief that we were building something that mattered. The Thanksgiving break of junior year, I flew home to Denver with a working prototype of FoodSaver to show my family. I'd practiced my pitch during the entire flight, imagining, foolishly, that my father might finally see my potential. The dinner started pleasantly enough. Mom had prepared all the traditional dishes, and even Jason seemed in good spirits, sharing stories about his new job at an investment firm. When conversation lulled, I pulled out my phone. "I've been working on something I'd like to show you all," I said, opening the FoodSaver beta. It's an app that connects restaurants with excess inventory to budget-conscious consumers. Mom leaned forward with interest. "That sounds clever, honey." I walked them through the user interface, explaining how both businesses and customers would benefit. Jason asked a few surface-level questions about the business model. And then my father cleared his throat. "So it's a glorified coupon app," he said flatly. "It's more than that," I started to explain. "It's about reducing food waste while—" "Stephanie," he interrupted, "do you know how many apps launch every day? Thousands. And most fail within months. This is exactly why I wanted you in business school. You have no understanding of market realities." I felt my face flush hot with humiliation. "We've already signed up 20 restaurants near campus for the pilot. Small, failing restaurants desperate for any business," he countered. "Frank," my mother interjected softly, "I think it sounds promising." He ignored her. "When this little project inevitably fails, maybe you'll finally get serious about your future." I didn't touch my pumpkin pie that night. The next morning, I changed my flight and returned to California early, vowing not to share my entrepreneurial efforts with my family again until I had undeniable success to report. Back at UCLA, I threw myself into my studies with renewed determination. A professor in my advanced algorithms class, Dr. Hayden, took notice of my work and invited me to join a small research group he was leading. Dr. Hayden was everything my father wasn't: encouraging, constructive in his criticism, and genuinely interested in helping his students succeed. "You have a gift, Stephanie," he told me after I presented a particularly innovative solution to a complex programming challenge. "But more importantly, you have grit. That combination will take you far." Under his mentorship, I flourished academically. He also connected me with an internship opportunity at TechForward, a rising startup developing security solutions for enterprise clients. The internship was unpaid, which meant working even more hours at my paying jobs, but the experience and connections proved invaluable. Meanwhile, FoodSaver launched officially but struggled to gain traction. Despite Tara's marketing efforts, we couldn't achieve the critical mass of users needed to make the platform viable. After 4 months, we made the difficult decision to shut it down. "I'm sorry," I told Tara the night we officially pulled the plug. "I feel like I failed us." She refilled our wine glasses and raised hers in a toast to failing forward. "We learned more from this than any class, and next time, we'll be smarter." Her resilience was infectious, and instead of feeling defeated, I started mentally cataloging the lessons. We'd built features users didn't need. Our onboarding process was too complicated. We hadn't considered the restaurant staff's technical limitations. Every mistake was a data point for future success. Senior year arrived quickly. I graduated with highest honors in computer science, with a minor in business administration, a small concession to my father's insistence on practical education. Dr. Hayden helped me secure several promising job interviews, and I had offers from 3 tech companies before graduation day. My mother flew out for the ceremony. My father and Jason couldn't make it, or rather, chose not to. Dad claimed an important business conference, though social media later revealed he'd been golfing that weekend. His absence stung but no longer surprised me. "He is proud of you," Mom insisted as we shared a celebratory dinner afterward. "He just doesn't know how to show it," I nodded, not wanting to argue. But I'd stopped believing that particular fairy tale long ago. The recession hit shortly after graduation. 2 of my job offers were rescinded as companies implemented hiring freezes. The third offered a significantly reduced salary that wouldn't cover living expenses in Los Angeles. With my savings dwindling and student loans looming, I made the difficult decision to temporarily move back to Denver while regrouping. "It's just for a few months," I assured Tara as we hugged goodbye. "Just until the economy stabilizes." "Promise you won't let your dad crush your spirit," she replied, knowing exactly what I was walking back into.
Promise.
This time, I'm going on my terms. I couldn't have known then how drastically those terms would change, or that my next exit from my father's house would be permanent. Moving back into my childhood bedroom at 22 felt like failure, despite the economic realities that made it necessary. I took a job at a local tech company, several rungs below the positions I'd been offered before the recession, but it paid the bills and kept my skills sharp. Every evening after work, I continued developing my own projects, determined that this setback would be temporary. Dad implemented house rules. Within days of my return, curfew, chore assignments, mandatory family dinners. It was as if he was trying to reset our relationship to when I was 16, erasing my college degree and adult status. I bit my tongue and complied, reminding myself that every saved dollar meant freedom coming sooner. The tension built slowly over months. Dad would make subtle digs about my career choices during dinner. I'd respond with calm facts about the tech industry's growth potential. Mom would anxiously change the subject. Jason, who visited regularly with his wife Heather, would smirk silently at the familiar dynamic. "Technology is a bubble," Dad declared one Sunday dinner. "All these app companies with billion-dollar valuations and not a penny in profit. It's not sustainable." "Actually," I countered, unable to help myself, "tech showed the strongest recovery after the recession. The company I'm working for just posted record quarterly profits." He waved dismissively. "You're answering support calls. Hardly the cutting edge." "For now," I said. "I'm also developing my own security application. I have meetings with 2 potential investors next month." His eyebrows raised slightly, the closest he ever came to showing interest in my work. "What kind of security application?" For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this time would be different. I explained my concept. A user-friendly encryption system for small businesses that couldn't afford enterprise-level security solutions, but handled sensitive customer data. "Sounds complicated," he said finally. "Most small business owners can barely use email. They won't understand the value." "That's exactly the problem I'm solving," I pressed. "Making advanced security accessible to non-technical users." He shook his head. "You need to focus on climbing the ladder at your current job. Prove yourself there before chasing fantasies." I clenched my jaw and fell silent. The familiar disappointment settled in my stomach like a stone. The catalyst, when it finally came, was something trivial. On a Tuesday evening in June, I came home later than usual. A bug in my application had kept me at the office until 9, and I'd texted Mom that I'd missed dinner. When I walked through the door, Dad was waiting in his armchair, like a judge ready to pass sentence. "Your mother kept dinner waiting for an hour," he said without greeting. I texted that I'd be late. There was an issue at work I needed to fix. "At your real job or your imaginary company?" His tone was razor sharp. I took a deep breath. "Dad, I'm working on something important. Something that could change everything for me." "What you're doing," he said, standing up, "is living in a fantasy world. You're wasting your education and your potential on pipe dreams." I'd heard it all before, but that night, something inside me refused to absorb one more word of his criticism. My pipe dreams are already generating interest from actual investors. People who understand technology see the value in my work, even if you can't. His face darkened. "Watch your tone, young lady. As long as you live under my roof, I follow your rules." "I know. And I have been. But that doesn't give you the right to dismiss everything I'm passionate about." "Passionate?" He scoffed. "Passion doesn't pay bills. Practical career choices do. Your brother understood that." He's already being considered for a management position while you're still playing with computers. I'm not playing with anything. I'm building a business. And comparing me to Jason doesn't work anymore. We're different people with different skills. Mom appeared in the doorway, anxiety written across her face. Dinner's in the oven if you're hungry, Stephanie. The problem, Dad continued as if she hadn't spoken, is that you've always thought you were too smart to listen to advice. Your grandmother filled your head with nonsense about following your dreams, and look where it's gotten you. Back in your childhood bedroom at 22. The mention of Grandma Lillian ignited something fierce inside me. Don't bring her into this. At least she believed in me. And I don't. Who paid for your education? Who put a roof over your head? Who's supported you your entire life? Supported me? I laughed incredulously. You've criticized every choice I've ever made. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. Because you consistently make poor choices. His voice rose. You chose the wrong degree, the wrong career path, and now you're wasting time on a business idea that will never succeed. Jason and Heather had arrived for an impromptu visit during our argument, standing awkwardly in the hallway. Maybe we should come back another time, Jason suggested. No, stay, Dad said. Perhaps your sister could learn something from your example. That was the final match to the gasoline. I don't need to learn from Jason's example. I'm not Jason. I'm not you. And I'm done trying to meet your impossible standards. Dad's face contorted with anger. If you're so confident in your abilities, perhaps it's time you stood on your own 2 feet completely. No more safety net. Frank, Mom interjected, let's all calm down. He ignored her. I've carried you long enough. You think you know better than everyone? Prove it. I will, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Not under my roof, you won't. His words came slowly, deliberately. Get out and stay out. You're no daughter of mine. The room fell silent. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Jason looked down at his feet. Heather, to her credit, looked horrified. Frank, you don't mean that, Mom whispered. I do, he said, never taking his eyes off me. She wants independence? She's got it. Tonight. I stood perfectly still, absorbing the full impact of his words. The pain was breathtaking, a physical ache radiating from my chest. But beneath the pain was something unexpected. Relief. The pretense was over. The conditional love had finally shown its true face. Fine, I said quietly. I'll pack my things. Stephanie, no. Mom pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Frank, stop this right now. But it was too late. Something had broken between us that couldn't be repaired with apologies or time. I walked upstairs to my room, pulled out my largest suitcase, and began methodically packing essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop and equipment, important documents. The rest, childhood mementos, books, old photos, would have to stay behind. Mom appeared in my doorway, frantic. Don't go. He'll calm down. He always does. I zipped the suitcase closed. This isn't about his anger, Mom. This is about me finally accepting that nothing I do will ever be enough for him. And I can't live like that anymore. Where will you go? She asked, her voice small. I'll figure it out. I hugged her tightly, memorizing the smell of her perfume. I'll be okay. I promise. Jason stood awkwardly in the hallway as I dragged my suitcase downstairs. This is crazy, he said. Just apologize and wait until tomorrow. I shook my head. There's nothing to apologize for. Dad sat in his armchair, pretending to read the newspaper. He didn't look up as I walked past. His silence was the final confirmation that his ultimatum wasn't a momentary rage, but a deliberate severing. At the door, I turned back one last time. Mom, I'll call you soon. Dad. I paused, searching for parting words that wouldn't haunt me later. Finding none, I simply said, goodbye. The door closed behind me with a definitive click. I stood on the porch of my childhood home, one suitcase containing all my worldly possessions, $230 in my checking account, and no idea where I would sleep that night. I made it to my car before the tears came. Fumbling with the keys, I finally got the engine started, only to hear an ominous grinding sound. The check engine light that I'd been ignoring for weeks glowed ominously on the dashboard. I managed to drive 6 blocks before the car shuddered and died completely. Sitting in my dead car, on a darkening street, I laughed through my tears at the perfect storm of disaster my life had become. Then I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would answer.
Tara?
It's Stephanie. I need help. The first few nights after being kicked out remain a blur in my memory. Tara immediately sent me money for a plane ticket to Los Angeles, but with my car broken down, I had to spend the first night in a cheap motel near the Denver airport. I remember sitting on the edge of the sagging mattress, under the harsh fluorescent light, taking inventory of my new reality. I had my laptop closed for about a week, my professional documents, and after the plane ticket purchase, just over $100 to my name. My car, still sitting abandoned 6 blocks from my parents' house, wasn't worth fixing. My apartment lease in Los Angeles had long since expired. I had student loans coming due and no permanent address. The magnitude of starting completely over at 22 was overwhelming. I allowed myself exactly 1 hour of panic and tears that night. Then I washed my face, opened my laptop, and began making plans. By the time I landed in Los Angeles the next day, I had sent out 15 job applications, emailed Dr. Hayden about potential opportunities, and researched the cheapest short-term housing options in the city. Tara was waiting at the airport, wrapping me in a hug before I could even set down my suitcase. "You're staying with me until you figure things out," she insisted as we drove to her apartment.
No arguments.
Tara's studio apartment was barely big enough for one person, let alone two, but we made it work. I slept on an air mattress that slowly deflated throughout the night, requiring reinflation every evening. I kept my belongings neatly contained in my suitcase, trying to minimize my footprint in her space. Despite her generosity, I was determined not to become a burden. "I won't stay long," I promised on my 3rd night there. "Just until my first paycheck." "Shut up and eat your ramen," she replied affectionately. "Mi casa es su casa, especially when your dad is being a world-class jerk." Pride made me want to call home, to show them I was fine without their help. Reality kept me from making that call. I wasn't fine. I was one missed opportunity away from true homelessness, and that knowledge kept me awake long after Tara fell asleep each night. A week after arriving in LA, I got an email from Dr. Hayden that changed everything. His former colleague needed a junior developer at a cybersecurity firm, and he'd recommended me. The salary was modest but enough to live on, and more importantly, it was in exactly the field where I wanted to build my career. "They need someone who can start immediately," Dr. Hayden explained when I called him. "The interview is just a formality. The job is yours if you want it." I started the following Monday. The company, SecureLink Solutions, was small but growing, with a client list that included several Fortune 500 companies. My role involved debugging existing security protocols and assisting in developing new features. The work was challenging and exactly the kind of experience I needed. With my first paycheck, I found the cheapest housing option possible, a bedroom in an apartment shared with 3 other young professionals in a less desirable part of the city. Melissa was a paralegal, Brandon a personal trainer, and Dina a restaurant manager. None of us were living our dream scenarios, but we made it work, establishing cleaning schedules and quiet hours, sharing communal items like toilet paper and dish soap to save money. My bedroom was barely larger than a walk-in closet, fitting only a twin mattress on the floor and a small desk I found on the street and refurbished. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, with no conditions or criticism attached. The first night in that tiny room, I slept better than I had in years. I established a ruthless budget. Every unnecessary expense was eliminated. I meal prepped simple dishes on Sundays, brought lunch to work every day, and turned down happy hours and dinners out. Half of each paycheck went to living expenses, a quarter to student loan payments, and the remaining quarter into savings, my new startup fund. Nights and weekends belonged to my own project. The security application I'd begun developing before being kicked out was taking shape into something with real potential. I called it Shield Key, a simple interface hiding sophisticated encryption technology that would allow small businesses to protect customer data without needing an IT department. 6 months into this new life, I attended a tech meetup focused on cybersecurity innovations. The event was held at a co-working space downtown, offering free pizza and networking opportunities. I almost didn't go. I was exhausted from a particularly challenging week at work, but Tara insisted. "You need to talk to actual humans sometimes," she said, practically pushing me out the door. Plus, free dinner. The pizza was mediocre, but the connections were invaluable. Particularly Adrian Wright, a user experience designer who asked thoughtful questions during my informal discussion about Shield Key with a small group of attendees. "The technology sounds solid," he said as we continued our conversation over lukewarm soda afterward. "But your interface needs work if you want non-technical users to adopt it." Rather than feeling criticized, I was intrigued. "What would you suggest?" Adrian pulled out his tablet and quickly sketched a simplified version of my current interface. Something like this. Fewer options visible up front. Progressive disclosure of features as users need them. Looking at his design, I immediately saw how much clearer it was than my developer-centric approach. "That's actually brilliant." He grinned. "Security people focus on functionality first, which makes sense. But users focus on usability. Combine both, and you've got something special." We exchanged contact information and over the next few weeks, met several times to discuss Shield Key. Adrian's expertise in user experience perfectly complemented my technical knowledge. He understood how to make complex technology approachable, exactly what my target market of small business owners needed. "We should partner on this," I suggested one evening as we worked at a coffee shop near my apartment. "Your UX skills plus my security expertise. 50-50 split." Adrian considered it for all of 5 seconds. "I'm in. But we need funding to do this right." The search for investors became our shared mission. We refined our business plan, created a compelling pitch deck, and practiced our presentation until we could deliver it in our sleep. Then we started reaching out to everyone who might be interested: angel investors, small venture capital firms, business incubators. The rejections piled up quickly. "Too early stage. Market too niche. Come back when you have users." Each no was discouraging, but we kept refining our approach, learning from the questions and concerns raised in each meeting. Our breakthrough came 9 months after my father had kicked me out. A small angel investor named Patricia Lawson, who specialized in cybersecurity startups, agreed to meet us. Patricia had built and sold 2 successful security companies and understood both the technical challenges and market opportunity of what we were proposing. "Most security products are built for enterprises with dedicated IT teams," she said during our meeting. "Small businesses are left vulnerable because existing solutions are too complex and expensive. You're addressing a real gap." After 3 follow-up meetings and extensive due diligence, Patricia offered us $150,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 15% equity stake. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to turn Shield Key from a side project into a real company. The night after signing the investment agreement, I sat on the floor of my tiny bedroom, back against the wall, overwhelmed by how far I'd come in less than a year. From homeless to funded founder. From rejected daughter to emerging entrepreneur. I called my mother for the first time since leaving Denver. "Stephanie." Her voice was cautious, as if she couldn't quite believe it was me. "Are you okay? Where are you?"
"I've in la, Mom."
"And I'm more than okay." I told her about SecureLink, about Shield Key, about the investment. She listened quietly, occasionally making small sounds of surprise or approval. "That's wonderful, honey," she said when I finished. "I always knew you would do something special." "Is Dad there?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Her hesitation told me everything. "He's still processing things."
"Give him time."
I swallowed my disappointment. "Tell him about the investment if you want. Or don't. It doesn't matter anymore." But it did matter. Despite everything, some childish part of me still wanted his approval. Still wanted him to say he had been wrong about me. I just wasn't willing to sacrifice my self-respect to get it anymore. With funding secured, Adrian and I took the leap. We both quit our jobs to focus on Shield Key full-time. We rented a small office in a startup incubator space, hired a part-time developer to help accelerate our build, and began courting our first beta customers. The next 18 months were the most intense of my life. 16-hour days were the norm. I moved to an even cheaper apartment to stretch our runway. I learned about sales, marketing, accounting, human resources, all the aspects of business my father had claimed I was ignoring. Every decision, every dollar spent, was scrutinized. The pressure was immense, but unlike the pressure from my father, this was pressure with purpose. We were building something real. Our beta launch with 15 small businesses went surprisingly well. The feedback was positive, with users particularly praising the intuitive interface Adrian had designed. We fixed bugs, enhanced features, and prepared for a wider release. Patricia introduced us to her network of security professionals and potential clients. Slowly, our user base grew. By the 18-month mark, we had over 300 paying customers, still small, but growing steadily and generating enough revenue to extend our runway. Then came the moment that changed everything. A well-known tech blogger with a focus on cybersecurity reviewed Shield Key, calling it the security solution small businesses have been waiting for and impressively sophisticated technology hidden behind an interface my grandmother could use. The article was picked up by larger tech publications, and suddenly our growth curve wasn't linear anymore. It was exponential. Within 2 months of that review, we had over 2,000 customers and were generating enough revenue to hire 3 more employees. 6 months later, we hit 10,000 customers and moved to larger offices. Adrian and I were no longer doing everything ourselves. We had a team of 15 passionate people helping build our vision. 1 year after the review, we reached a milestone I had only dreamed about: $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Shield Key had transcended from struggling startup to viable business, and the industry was taking notice. The first acquisition offer came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a team meeting when my phone buzzed with an email from the VP of Business Development at Data Fortress, one of the largest enterprise security companies in the world. They wanted to discuss potential strategic opportunities. I showed the email to Adrian after the meeting, trying to contain my excitement. This could be nothing, right? Maybe they just want to partner on something. Adrian's eyebrows shot up.
Or they want to buy us.
Data Fortress doesn't partner with companies our size. They acquire them. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at their headquarters in San Francisco. Adrian and I spent every spare moment preparing, researching their recent acquisitions, analyzing their product gaps that Shield Key might fill, and debating what our company might be worth to them. The Data Fortress offices were everything our startup space wasn't: sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the bay. We were escorted to a conference room where 4 executives in perfectly tailored suits waited. "We've been watching Shield Key with interest," their VP began after brief introductions. "Your penetration in the small business market is impressive. We've struggled to reach that segment effectively." What followed was 2 hours of detailed discussion about our technology, customer base, and team. They asked pointed questions about our growth projections and competitive landscape. We answered honestly but strategically, highlighting our strengths without revealing all our future plans. Finally, the CEO joined us. Martin Green was known for building Data Fortress from a small security consulting firm into a publicly traded company worth billions. He didn't waste time on small talk. "We'd like to acquire Shield Key," he stated plainly. "We believe it would complement our enterprise offerings and give us entry into a market segment we've failed to capture." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "We're not actively seeking acquisition." "Everyone has a number," he replied with a slight smile. "Ours is $2 million. It took every ounce of self-control not to react visibly. $2 million would change my life completely. I could pay off my student loans, buy a house, have financial security I'd never known. But looking at Adrian's carefully blank expression, I knew we were thinking the same thing. It wasn't enough. We appreciate the interest, I said carefully. But we believe ShieldKey has significant growth ahead. 2 million doesn't reflect our current value, let alone our future potential. Martin nodded, unsurprised. Think about it. The offer stands for 2 weeks. On the flight back to Los Angeles, Adrian and I dissected every moment of the meeting. 2 million is insulting, he said. We're already generating close to 1 million in ARR, growing at over 20% month over month. I agreed. But the fact that Data Fortress is interested at all validates everything we've built. Others will follow. Adrian was right. Within days of declining Data Fortress's offer, we received inquiries from 2 other major security companies. Word had gotten out that we were in play. Suddenly, ShieldKey wasn't just a promising startup. It was a valuable acquisition target. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. We hired a chief revenue officer with experience scaling security companies. We expanded our engineering team to accelerate our product roadmap. We moved again to offices that could accommodate our growing staff, now numbering 35. Our customer base crossed 25,000, and our annual revenue hit 3 million. Industry analysts began mentioning ShieldKey as a disruptive force in the small business security market. We were invited to speak at major technology conferences. A prominent tech magazine included me in their 30 under 30 list of promising young entrepreneurs. The next acquisition offer came from SecureTech, the largest competitor to Data Fortress. Their initial offer was 8 million, a significant improvement, but still not reflective of our growth trajectory. After 2 rounds of negotiations, they increased to 12 million. It was tempting. Very tempting. But our momentum was only increasing. Our newest feature, automated compliance reporting for various regulatory standards, was generating particular interest from slightly larger businesses than our initial target market. We're just scratching the surface of our potential, I told Adrian as we debated the offer over late-night takeout in our office. If we sell now, we'll always wonder what could have been. He nodded slowly. So we keep building. And build we did. Our team expanded to 50, then 70. We opened a small office in New York to better serve East Coast clients. Our annual recurring revenue passed $10 million, a milestone that seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. The tech press began running profiles of our company, often focusing on my personal journey from college graduate to successful founder. I gave interviews selectively, always redirecting attention to our product and team rather than my backstory. I never mentioned being kicked out by my father or the hardships of those early months. That pain was still too personal to share publicly. 3 years after being thrown out of my childhood home, I received an email that changed everything again. The subject line was simple: acquisition discussion. Privacy Guard. Privacy Guard was the undisputed giant in our industry, a publicly traded company with over $5 billion in annual revenue and the most respected name in data security. Their CEO wanted to meet personally. The meeting took place at their headquarters in Silicon Valley. Unlike the Data Fortress meeting, this one started with the CEO himself, James Wilson, a legendary figure in tech who had built Privacy Guard from startup to industry leader. I rarely do these meetings personally, he said after we were seated in his surprisingly modest office. But I've been following ShieldKey's progress with interest. You've accomplished something remarkable, making enterprise-grade security accessible to businesses that previously couldn't afford or manage it. We spent the first hour discussing not financials but vision, where we saw ShieldKey evolving, how we thought about the future of security for small businesses, what challenges we found most pressing in the industry. Our philosophies align, James said finally. Which brings me to why I asked for this meeting. We want to acquire ShieldKey and make it Privacy Guard's small business division. You and Adrian would join our executive team, leading this division with significantly more resources than you currently have. I glanced at Adrian before asking, "What are you thinking in terms of valuation?" James didn't hesitate. $75 million. 60 in cash, 15 in Privacy Guard stock with a 3-year vesting schedule for you and Adrian. The number hit me like a physical force. $75 million. After investor dilution and splitting with Adrian, I would walk away with over 30 million. From homeless to multimillionaire in 3 years. We need time to consider, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. Of course.
Take a week.
But know that this isn't just about the money for us. We believe ShieldKey fills a crucial gap in our product lineup, and your team's expertise would be invaluable as we expand in this market. The flight back to Los Angeles was quiet, both Adrian and I lost in our thoughts. The magnitude of the offer was difficult to process. We'd built ShieldKey from nothing into something valued at $75 million. After extensive discussions with our board, our lawyers, and each other, we decided to accept Privacy Guard's offer. The acquisition would give our technology the reach and resources to help far more businesses than we could achieve independently. Our team would remain intact, and Adrian and I would have the opportunity to continue leading our vision, but with vastly more support. The day the acquisition closed, I sat alone in my office after everyone had left for the celebration party. I opened my banking app and watched as my portion of the proceeds, $32 million after all deductions, appeared in my account. The number seemed surreal, disconnected from reality. I thought about the night my father had told me to get out and stay out, about sleeping on Tara's floor, about the tiny bedroom with the mattress on the floor, about all the ramen dinners and missed social events to save every possible dollar. Then I called a real estate agent. I'm interested in purchasing a house in Malibu, I said. My budget is around $30 million. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers on a modern glass and steel mansion perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. 5 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the horizon, and floor-to-ceiling windows that filled every room with light and ocean views. The price tag, $28 million. It was extravagant. Possibly irresponsible. Definitely more house than I needed. But standing on the balcony that first evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. I had proven my father wrong in the most definitive way possible. I had built something valuable. I had succeeded on my own terms. And now I had a home where no one could ever tell me to leave. The first month in my Malibu mansion felt like living in a dream. I would wake up each morning to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon. The house was almost comically large for one person. My footsteps echoed in empty rooms filled with hastily purchased furniture that still felt more like a staged home than a lived-in space. I hired a housekeeper, a groundskeeper, and a personal assistant to manage the practical aspects of my new life. When the housekeeper asked about my preferences for various rooms, I often had no answer. I'd never had the luxury of preferences before, only necessities and compromises. Whatever you think is best became my standard response, which visibly frustrated her. She wanted direction. I was still adjusting to having choices. The transition from scrappy entrepreneur to wealthy executive came with unexpected challenges. At Privacy Guard, I led a division with 100 employees and a substantial budget. People looked to me for decisions affecting millions of dollars and countless customers. I handled those responsibilities with confidence born from building ShieldKey from nothing. But in my personal life, I felt strangely adrift. The constant struggle that had defined my existence since college was suddenly gone. The necessity of working 16-hour days, of tracking every dollar, of making each decision with survival as the primary consideration, all vanished overnight. In their place was a void I didn't know how to fill. Adrian noticed during one of our strategy sessions at Privacy Guard headquarters. "You seem distracted lately," he said as we grabbed coffee afterward. "Everything okay with the new place?" "The house is incredible," I replied automatically. "I still can't believe it's mine." He studied me for a moment. "That wasn't what I asked." I sighed, grateful for a friend who knew me well enough to see through the surface. I should be ecstatic, right? I have everything I've worked for. But sometimes I wake up in this massive house, and it feels empty. "Have you told your family about any of this?" he asked carefully. He knew the broad strokes of my estrangement, but not all the details. I shook my head. Mom knows I'm doing well, but not specifics. I haven't spoken to my father since the night he kicked me out. Maybe it's time? Not for his sake, but for yours. His suggestion lingered in my mind for weeks. I'd maintained minimal contact with my mother through occasional phone calls, always brief and focused on surface-level updates. She knew about Shield Key's success in general terms, but not about the acquisition or my new wealth. I'd asked her not to share even those limited details with my father, though I suspected she had. Jason had reached out once, shortly after a tech publication ran a profile mentioning Shield Key's rapid growth. His message was awkwardly congratulatory, with an undercurrent of surprise that suggested he'd shared our father's doubts about my path. I'd responded politely, but briefly. 3 months after moving to Malibu, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line was simply, "Congratulations. Stephanie," it read. "Your mother showed me the article about your company's acquisition. Impressive accomplishment. Would like to reconnect when you're next in Denver. Dad."
No epalegi.
No acknowledgement of our estrangement or his role in it. Just a terse note that managed to be both congratulatory and demanding at once. Classic Frank Blackwood. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to let him feel a fraction of the rejection he'd inflicted on me. Another part, the wounded child still seeking approval, wanted to reply immediately, detailing every success, every validation that proved how wrong he'd been. Instead, I forwarded the email to my therapist, another luxury my new wealth afforded, with a simple question: how do I handle this? Dr. Brennan had been helping me process the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships and sudden wealth. Her response was thoughtful. Consider what you want from any potential reconnection. Closure? Reconciliation? Vindication? Be clear about your objectives before deciding. What did I want? The question consumed me for days. Revenge felt petty. Complete reconciliation seemed impossible given my father's personality. Perhaps closure was the most realistic goal, a chance to redefine our relationship on more adult terms now that I was no longer financially or emotionally dependent on his approval. After careful consideration, I replied, "Thank you for the congratulations. I'll be in Denver next month for a conference and could meet for dinner. Please let me know if that works for your schedule." The dinner was arranged at an upscale restaurant downtown, neutral territory. I flew to Denver a day early to prepare mentally, checking into a luxury hotel rather than staying at my childhood home. The message was subtle but clear. I was a visitor now, not a daughter seeking readmission to the family. Seeing my parents again after 3 years was jarring. Dad looked older, his hair now completely gray, his posture slightly stooped. Mom seemed smaller somehow, her smile anxious as she hugged me tightly in the restaurant lobby. Jason and Heather joined us, adding to the family reunion atmosphere that felt both familiar and utterly foreign. "You look well," Dad said as we were seated, his eyes taking in my tailored designer dress and the subtle indicators of wealth I hadn't even realized I'd adopted: the expensive watch, the confident posture of someone who no longer feared financial insecurity. "Thank you," I replied. "Work keeps me busy, but I enjoy it." The conversation that followed was a masterclass in emotional avoidance. We discussed safe topics: the restaurant's menu, Denver's changing skyline, Jason's recent promotion. No one mentioned the night I'd left or the years of silence that followed. Until dessert, when Dad cleared his throat and adopted the authoritative tone I remembered from childhood lectures. "Your company's acquisition was quite an achievement. $75 million, according to the business press." I nodded, maintaining eye contact.
Yes.
Shield Key grew faster than even we anticipated. "I always knew you had that kind of drive," he continued, as if rewriting history. "Gets it from me, I suppose. That determination to succeed no matter what." Mom shifted uncomfortably. Jason suddenly became very interested in his cheesecake. Heather looked between us with wide eyes. The old Stephanie would have let it pass, would have accepted this reframing to keep the peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Actually," I said calmly, "I succeeded despite being told repeatedly that I would fail, that my ideas weren't practical. That I was wasting my potential. Dad's expression tightened. I was tough on you because I wanted you to be prepared for the real world. Looks like it worked. Is that how you remember it? I asked, my voice steady. Because I remember being told to get out and stay out. I remember having nowhere to go and almost nothing to my name. I remember building my company without a safety net because you removed it. The table fell silent. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Jason stared at his plate. That was an unfortunate misunderstanding, Dad said stiffly. I never intended. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I interrupted. It was a defining moment. And while I don't thank you for it, I acknowledge that it forced me to rely completely on myself. So, in a way, you were right. I did learn from your example. I learned exactly what kind of parent, what kind of person I never want to be. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. Thank you for dinner. Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. I think I need some air. Outside the restaurant, the cool Denver evening helped calm my racing heart. I hadn't planned to be so direct, but hearing him attempt to co-opt my success as validation of his parenting had triggered something primal. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. That took guts. He needed to hear it. Call me tomorrow? Unexpected tears pricked my eyes. Perhaps I wasn't as alone in my perspective as I'd thought. Back in Malibu, the confrontation with my father triggered a cascade of emotional aftershocks. I experienced my first panic attack in my palatial living room, gasping for breath on a couch that cost more than my entire first year's salary at SecureLink. The irony wasn't lost on me, having everything I'd worked for and still feeling like I was drowning.
Dr.
Brennan helped me recognize that financial success, while validating, hadn't healed the deeper wounds of conditional love and rejection. Your father's approval was the currency you sought your entire life, she explained. Now you have literal currency beyond imagination, but that emotional currency is still missing. It creates a cognitive dissonance. The healing process wasn't linear. There were days when the emptiness of my beautiful house felt overwhelming. Other days when the view of the ocean filled me with genuine peace and gratitude. Gradually, I began to make the space truly mine, replacing generic furnishings with pieces that reflected my personal taste, converting one of the unused bedrooms into a home office where I could work on new ideas. I established the Blackwood Foundation, focused on supporting young women in technology with mentorship and seed funding. The foundation gave purpose to my wealth beyond personal comfort, allowing me to create the support system I wished I'd had during those early struggling days. 6 months after the Denver dinner, my mother visited Malibu alone. Seeing her reaction to my home, the genuine happiness in her eyes as she explored each room, helped me see my success through a different lens. Not as vindication against my father, but as an achievement worth celebrating for its own sake. I always believed in you, she said as we sat on the terrace watching the sunset. Even when I didn't stand up to your father the way I should have. I hope you know that. I know, Mom, I replied, and was surprised to realize I meant it. Her failings as a protector didn't negate her love, complicated as it was by her own limitations. She stayed for a week, longer than we'd spent together since I left for college. In that time, we began rebuilding our relationship as adults, not mother and dependent daughter, but two women with shared history and genuine affection. Jason and I reconnected as well, our adult relationship healthier than our competitive childhood dynamic. He visited with Heather and their newborn son, my nephew Thomas. Holding that tiny human, I felt a fierce determination that he would never experience the conditional love that had shaped my childhood. My father remained distant, our contact limited to occasional emails and brief phone conversations on holidays. I accepted that a meaningful relationship might never be possible given his inability to acknowledge his role in our estrangement. That acceptance, painful as it was, brought its own kind of peace. 3 years after acquiring my mansion, I no longer felt like an imposter in my own life. The house had become a true home, filled with memories of friends gathered around my dining table, of quiet mornings watching dolphins play in the distance, of late nights working on new ideas that excited me regardless of their profit potential. I'd found a balance between my role at Privacy Guard and personal projects that fed my entrepreneurial spirit. I'd built a social circle of genuine friends who knew my story, but didn't define me by either my wealth or my past struggles. And most importantly, I'd begun to define success on my own terms, not as a repudiation of my father's criticism, but as an authentic expression of my values and abilities. One morning, as I stood on my balcony watching the sunrise, I remembered something Grandma Lillian had told me long ago. Success isn't about proving others wrong, Stephanie. It's about proving yourself right. In that moment, with the first light of day illuminating the endless horizon, I finally understood what she meant. 5 years have passed since I first stepped into my Malibu mansion. 5 years since the acquisition that transformed me from struggling entrepreneur to wealthy executive. The journey from that painful night when my father threw me out to where I stand today continues to shape every aspect of my life, though in ways I never could have anticipated. My professional life evolved significantly after the initial 3-year commitment to Privacy Guard ended. While the experience had been valuable, I missed the autonomy and creative freedom of running my own company. With the financial security to take risks, I launched a new startup focused on educational technology, creating affordable, accessible cybersecurity training for schools and nonprofits. EdSecure combines my technical expertise with a mission that feels deeply personal. Growing up with limited access to technology education showed me how crucial these skills are for future opportunities. We price our products on a sliding scale, making enterprise-level security training available to organizations with limited budgets. After 2 years, we're serving over 5,000 schools nationwide, with a team of 40 passionate employees who share my vision. My relationship with Adrian remains one of my most valued professional partnerships. Though we went separate ways after Privacy Guard, he launched a successful UX design consultancy. We still meet monthly to bounce ideas off each other and provide honest feedback. His perspective helped shape EdSecure's user-friendly interface, making complex security concepts accessible to non-technical educators. Personally, the most unexpected change came in the form of Michael Chen, who I met at a technology education conference in San Francisco. As the founder of a nonprofit focusing on bringing STEM education to underserved communities, his passion and integrity impressed me immediately. Unlike previous relationships where my success or wealth became a complicating factor, Michael was secure in his own purpose and accomplishments. Our relationship developed slowly, friendship first, then deeper connection. He was the first person I brought home who made my massive house feel appropriately sized, filling it with laughter and warmth. After 2 years together, he moved in, bringing his collection of vintage science fiction novels and habit of making elaborate Sunday breakfasts that we eat on the terrace, regardless of weather. "Your success is part of you, not all of you," he told me once when I worried about the imbalance our financial situations might create. I fell in love with Stephanie the person, not Stephanie the millionaire. The healing process with my family continues to evolve in complex ways. My mother and I have built a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than the dysfunctional dynamics of my childhood. She visits frequently, has developed a close bond with Michael, and has even begun painting again, her passion that was sidelined during her marriage. Watching her reclaim her creativity in her 60s has been one of my greatest joys. Jason and I have grown surprisingly close. The competitive dynamic our father fostered between us dissolved once we were both free to define success on our own terms. He eventually left the investment firm where he'd been following our father's prescribed path and started a sustainable construction company that better aligned with his personal values. Our conversations now are supportive rather than comparative, focused on helping each other thrive rather than measuring who's ahead. My father remains the most complicated relationship in my life. After several strained attempts at reconciliation, we settled into a distant but civil connection. He's never apologized for kicking me out. I've accepted he likely never will, but he has made small gestures of acknowledgement. A clipping of an article about EdSecure sent by mail. An email congratulating me on an industry award. Brief, surface-level interactions that acknowledge my existence without breaching the emotional walls between us. Last Christmas, I invited my entire family to Malibu, my first time hosting a family holiday. Dad accepted, which surprised everyone, including himself perhaps. The visit was awkward at times, but also revealed glimpses of the man beyond the stern patriarch I'd grown up with. Watching him play with Jason's children on the beach, I saw a momentary softness I'd rarely witnessed in childhood. "Your house is quite something," he said on the last night, as we stood on the balcony after everyone else had gone to bed. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the closest thing to approval he could offer. "I still think business school would have been a more direct path," he added, unable to resist a small criticism. I smiled, no longer wounded by his inability to fully embrace my choices. "Maybe, but this was my path." He nodded, and we stood in silence, watching the moonlight on the ocean. Not reconciled, not healed, but at peace with our differences in a way that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. One of the most meaningful aspects of my journey has been the opportunity to mentor young women facing similar family pressures around their career choices. Through the Blackwood Foundation, I've worked with dozens of aspiring female entrepreneurs, providing not just funding but the emotional support and validation I lacked at their stage. Lily Ramirez, our first grant recipient, recently sold her healthcare application to a major medical technology company. At the celebration dinner, she raised a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To Stephanie, who believed in me when my own family said tech wasn't for girls from East LA. "You didn't just fund my company, you showed me what was possible by living it yourself." Her words crystallized something I've come to understand. Our greatest impact often comes not from our direct achievements, but from how they create possibility in others' minds. Last month, I visited Grandma Lillian's grave in Denver for the first time since her funeral. I brought yellow roses, her favorite, and sat beside the simple headstone for over an hour. I told her about the mansion, about EdSecure, about Michael, and the foundation. I thanked her for the computer that started everything, but more importantly, for being the one person who saw me clearly when I couldn't yet see myself. "You were right," I whispered before leaving. "I did build something wonderful." The lessons of my journey continue to reveal themselves daily. I've learned that resilience isn't just about surviving hardship, but about maintaining your core self through both struggle and success. That true wealth isn't measured in square footage or bank balances, but in relationships that celebrate your authentic self. That sometimes the people who should love you most fail spectacularly, and that's about their limitations, not your worthiness. Most importantly, I've learned that being told to get out and stay out, while devastating in the moment, forced me to find my own path in ways that comfort never would have. The mansion isn't a victory over my father's rejection. It's a testament to the strength I found when that rejection pushed me to rely completely on myself. The view from my terrace still takes my breath away, especially at sunrise when the entire ocean seems illuminated from within. But now I understand that the peace I feel watching those sunrises comes not from what I own but from who I've become. Someone who finally believes in her own worth, regardless of external validation or criticism. If there's one message I could share with anyone facing rejection or family wounds similar to mine, it's this: the people who can't see your value don't determine your worth. Their limitations aren't your destiny. The path forward may be harder without their support, but the strength you'll develop by relying on yourself will carry you further than their approval ever could. Life will always contain both pain and beauty. True resilience isn't avoiding the pain, it's learning to build a meaningful life that encompasses both, using even the deepest hurts as foundation stones for something authentic and purposeful. Have you ever experienced a rejection that ultimately pushed you towards something better? Or found strength in yourself that you didn't know existed until circumstances forced you to find it? Share your story in the comments below. Our collective journeys of resilience can inspire others who might be in that painful, kicked-out stage right now. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel for more stories of transformation, and share with someone who might need to hear that their current struggles could be the foundation of future strength. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the door that closes behind you is opening the way to a view you never imagined possible.